Hi, I'm Caitlin Galding, and this is my presentation on Carole Van Camp. Carole Van Camp is currently an associate professor at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. She is a practicing behavior analyst, as well as a researcher in the field of applied behavior analysis. Her research is focused on physical activity, severe behavior disorders, and other issues in applied behavior analysis. She mentors undergraduate and graduate students on projects. The research Van Camp has conducted has the primary goal of improving the lives of children. I've collected 5 published research articles written by Van Camp, with the purpose of this presentation being to further explain her contributions to applied behavior analysis. Within the literature that I found, the most common element was the use and effectiveness of Fitbits. Throughout her career, Van Camp has used applied behavior analysis to better understand physical activity in children, particularly how interventions and Fitbits affect the physical activity of elementary students during recess. She consistently found that the Fitbit is a reliable tool for measuring physical activity. 2 studies that did not fit this element instead looked at case studies where individuals had severe behavioral problems. If I were to interview Carole Van Camp, there are 3 questions I would ask her. First, what sparked your interest in the use of the Fitbit? Then, if a school were to have the funding for such a project, do you believe it would be beneficial to invest in Fitbits for all students? Finally, with the increase in technology, would you be interested in recreating the studies on increasing physical activity with adults in smartwatches such as the Apple Watch? The first study looked at intervention to increase physical activity during unstructured recess time. Understanding the health benefits of moderate to vigorous physical activity and knowledge that students in public schools are not engaging in enough moderate to vigorous physical activity, Hayes and Van Camp conducted a study to determine the effects of intervention on the increase of physical activity during unstructured recess time. There were 6 participants in this 2015 study, each a female at the age of 8. The students were given a Fitbit and 20 minutes of unstructured recess where they could not see their step count for baseline. When intervention occurred, students were allowed to see their steps and were given a goal to reach in the 20-minute period. They were given 1 immediate tangible reward if the goal was met. Their final data concluded that the intervention did increase the step count for children, but Hayes and Van Camp note that there are several limitations to their study, including data loss and the type of reinforcement. This article was chosen for its real-life application of behavior interventions used in a school setting. Although the participants were all the same age and gender, this study is a great start to having a better understanding of how interventions and reinforcements can change the behavior of students. For the next study, Van Camp and Berth conducted a study to both replicate and extend a previous study conducted in 2011 with the purpose of evaluating the observational system for recording physical activity by monitoring heart rates during physical activity in children. They extended the number of behaviors performed within the physical activity levels and included a Fitbit monitor to produce reliability in the steps per minute count. They had 4 children, 3 male and 1 female, between the ages of 6 and 13, participate in various leveled activities at a local park with playground equipment and the use of open space within the park. Usually using the same pedometer and the heart rate devices as the study previously conducted, as well as Fitbits, the participants completed 15 activities derived from the observational system for recording physical activity, 3 during each activity level. With each of the 5 levels, the intensity of the activity was increased. Van Camp and Berth found that once the participants reached level 4 activity, higher heart rates were present and each of the activities qualified to be moderate to vigorous physical activity. They additionally found that the steps per minute count was less reliable on the pedometers used than the Fitbit. This article was chosen for its extensive information regarding levels of physical activity and knowledge of heart rate being indicative of moderate to vigorous physical activity. It also relates to another study conducted by Van Camp in 2015. With hopes to replicate and extend the findings of their previous study from 2015, The researchers evaluated if the Fitbit could be used to give objective measurements of physical activity during structured and unstructured recess time. Within this study, they also assessed whether or not different levels of physical activity could be detected by the Fitbit without disrupting the current activity during the recess period, and if moderate to vigorous physical activity was reached. Participants, 15 second grade students, were assigned a Fitbit to be worn during recess. Recess began by taking laps around the playground. The participants were then instructed to either have free play for the remainder of recess, have a structured activity for the remainder of recess, or have free play followed by a structured activity. After data collection, the researchers found that the Fitbit is a reliable instrument for assessing steps per minute during recess. All children showed the most steps per minute during their laps at the beginning of recess, followed by the structured activity of soccer, the structured activity of tag, and free play. This article was chosen due to its relation of previous articles discussed. Van Camp is able to consistently show that the Fitbit is a reliable tool for measuring the physical activity present in students. Van Camp, Lerman, and Keeley understand the traditional method of using calculated means to give the results of data could obscure information in a study that is relevant to finding the responses of participants. In this study, the researchers used one case study to analyze the use of alternative data analysis to create a better understanding of responses to reinforcements. The case study was conducted with a 21-year-old participant who had been diagnosed with, quote, severe mental retardation, end quote, and was referred to the study in hopes of reducing her behavior of screaming. The frequency and duration of her screaming was collected during one school day. A functional analysis was conducted, and to reduce the behavior of screaming, there were 5 conditions conducted: attention, tangible, demand, no interaction, and play. During the attention, tangible, and demand conditions, potential reinforcers were delivered for 20 seconds for screams that lasted for at least 1 second. The participant screaming data was analyzed 4 different ways for the tangible and demand conditions. When looking only at the averages, the data suggested that the screaming did not decrease in tangible and demand conditions. However, the number of reinforcers decreased along sessions, suggesting that access to leisure items not being used intentionally as reinforcers are still reinforcing her behavior of screaming. Although this article was written 18 years ago, the information presented is still relevant in the application of applied behavior analysis. This article was chosen because of the case study indicating that our typical analysis of data may not be true to what is happening when studying a student's behavior. Finally, Van Camp, Vollmer, and Daniel conducted a state case study on a 13-year-old male, quote, diagnosed with autism and severe mental retardation, unquote, who was admitted to an inpatient unit for severe self-injurious behavior of putting dangerous substances in his eyes. During the functional analysis, it was found that his self-injurious behavior was being automatically reinforced. This type of self-injurious behavior is difficult to treat because the reinforcement cannot be easily manipulated by researchers. Thus, environmental enrichment was provided during this treatment. A preference assessment found that his most preferred item was a keyboard. 3 phases were conducted. In the first phase, the patient was allowed equal access to the dangerous item, the preferred item, and the non-preferred item with the therapist present. In the second phase, the participant had greater access, easier reach, to the preferred item than to the dangerous item with the therapist present. In the final phase, different sessions had the therapist present or absent with unequal access to the dangerous item. It was found that the use of environmental enrichment was able to significantly decrease his participation in self-injurious behavior. This article was used, again written 18 years ago, due to its high relevancy to working with students who participate in self-injurious behavior. This case study looks at the more difficult automatic reinforcement received from the behavior itself, an important aspect to consider when working with students who participate in self-injurious behavior. It also gives a brief overview of what environmental enrichment may look like in a clinical setting that could easily be transferred to a classroom setting. From what I have learned by reading the published research of Carole Van Camp, I have a better understanding of how useful techniques of applied behavior analysis can be in a variety of settings. Her research on the use of Fitbits and physical activity could make a difference in the health of students if implicated in school systems. Additionally, her case study research is still relevant 18 years after their publications, giving solutions to both data collection and the treatment of self-injurious behaviors. Here are my references.